Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Leanie Lambrink. A Yellowknife school board is bracing for the loss of 79 education assistants. The situation is uncertain, and that's because of changes to Jordan's principle. It's a legal requirement to ensure First Nations children get equal access to education, healthcare, and other services. The federal government is narrowing the criteria for Jordan's principal funding, leaving the YK1 school board with tough decisions. Avery Zingle explains.
Schools count on educational assistants to support their students in the classroom. But Yellowknife District 1 is worried that a key source of funding for these positions may have dried up. YK1 informed 79 educational assistants that they may not have jobs to return to this coming fall. And that's because the funding through Jordan's principal for these positions has not yet been confirmed. Rita Mueller is the president of the Northwest Territories Teachers Association.
They've put in a large number of applications through Jordan Principal for continued funding for services for students. They've been actively trying to get word from Jordan Principal funders as to whether their applications have been or are not going to be funded, right, for the upcoming school year. They've waited as long as they can, trying to apply that pressure to know either way. And they made a decision that in order to do the right thing by those that might be impacted by not getting the funding.
Mueller says that support staff funded through Jordan's principal were on one-year contracts. She says even though these were term positions with expiries, those staff were counting on Jordan's principal for their continued employment.
Of course, we don't want anybody to leave our education system discouraged, frustrated, angry, and not wanting to be part of it, especially someone who has worked, for the past year in helping to support students and staff and, have that knowledge, have that skill developed. We want them to stay. YK1 wants them to stay. It's just right now, it's so unpredictable.
She says education ministers from the Northwest Territories, Nunavut and Yukon are working to inform their federal counterparts about the consequences of losing this funding. Now, the government of the Northwest Territories does fund some education assistant positions, but since 2021, Jordan's principal has paid for roughly 60% of these positions in the NWT. The Education Department calculates that there should be one position for every 64 students from junior kindergarten to grade 12 in each community. The Education Department funded 133 support positions in 2021. That year, Jordan's principal paid for 205 more positions. In 2024, the department funded 127 education assistants, and Jordan's principal again paid for 205. Education Minister Caitlin Cleveland was not available for an interview today. She's in Ottawa meeting with federal ministers. In the meantime, the school district says it's reassigning its remaining assistants based on students' needs. Avery Zingle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
A professor who studies lead poisoning says people don't need to be afraid of an exposure to lead at two Yellowknife schools. But he does say it's a situation that needs to be dealt with thoughtfully and urgently. Families found out last week tests revealed high levels of lead in the water at two schools, 9 parts per billion at ACOL William McDonald School, 25 parts per billion at Range Lake North, both higher than Health Canada's acceptable maximum of 5 parts per billion.
If we take these samples to be consistent, we probably wouldn't expect children's blood lead levels to increase much. Maybe for children who use this regularly, it might increase it by 1 or 2 micrograms per deciliter at most. That's concerning, but you're not going to see any obvious impacts in a single child. So what we really worry about when we think about subtle increases in blood lead level is how they impact populations, large numbers of children.
Landfear says the results aren't a surprise. The problem has existed in Canada for 1 or 2 decades, particularly in older schools and older fountains. The NWT government has since cast doubt on its own testing. It says it didn't follow best practices, and it's called in a third party to do another round. A man facing sex charges testified in his own defense in Yellowknife today. The 39-year-old from Hay River in the NWT has pleaded not guilty to child luring, voyeurism, and sexual assault. The CBC's Nadir Hashmi has been covering the trial. He brings us this update.
A warning, some details in the story can be distressing to viewers. In a Yellowknife courtroom this morning, Justice Minuit said he was blown away by the accusations and didn't know what was behind them. Minuit said on one occasion he accidentally forgot his phone in a bathroom. He said he used his watch's camera button to see where the phone was. He said he saw the shower, but no one was there. Minuit said he never spied on the complainant. Earlier this week, the complainant, who was underage at the time of the alleged incidents, testified that she saw Minuit's phone in a bathroom pointed at the shower. She said he also made sexual jokes and touched her around her waist inappropriately. Two of Minuit's former partners testified he confessed to them that he did all the things he's accused of. The judge saw text messages and heard phone recordings that seemed to corroborate some of that testimony. In court today, Minuit said those were miscommunications. He agreed that some of the messages seemed like admissions of guilt, but he said he was emotionally overwhelmed and his words did not come out as clearly as he intended. Minuit said the charges have affected him professionally and personally. He said he was employed as a caseworker at the Hay River jail. He said after he was charged, he was reassigned. Minuit told the court the charges also affected his mental health. He said he attempted suicide twice. He's the last witness to testify in the trial. The lawyers for both sides will be giving their closing arguments tomorrow. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
A community in Nunavik is looking for a new source of drinking water. The water reservoir for the village of Umuyak ran dry last year. Climate change is suspected to be the cause. Samuel Watt has more.
Umuyak is a large reservoir to store water right next to the treatment plant. When it's full, it holds roughly 2 years' worth of water. But in March 2024, the Katavik Regional Government's Hossein Shafigati received a concerning call.
We were notified that there was no more water in the reservoir.
The spring area where the village draws water from during the summer had basically dried up. Shafigati suspects melting permafrost is changing the slope in parts of the village that could be changing the direction of the water flow away from the reservoir. He adds that melting permafrost is also a trigger for landslides.
That is when that active layer sitting on the slope permafrost loses the attachment to the permafrost and then it slides down the slope.
Last summer, the village flew in pumps to bring in water from further up the river. Going forward, they're looking for a new permanent water source. Permafrost researchers at Laval University are on the case. They've identified several possible sites, but all have logistical challenges. One river, for example, is near a landfill.
You have to pump the water uphill of the dump and the wastewater pond.
That means longer pipes and higher costs. Once a viable new water source is identified, the regional government will have to get it approved with Quebec's Environment Ministry. It will also take time to build new infrastructure. The regional government estimates the whole process to take up to 5 years. Samuel Watt, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Quebec's Minister of Public Safety announced last week $1.8 million for Landslide Research. The province says it would help the University of Laval to map out landslide-prone areas in Nunavik. Funding is also being provided for the Katavik Regional Government to improve risk management. Doing research in the north is more expensive than ever. Some who do it say the high costs are forcing them to cut down on their projects or cancel them altogether. Inflation and high travel costs mean research hubs like ArcticNet are struggling. ArcticNet is a national network that funds northern scientific, social, and economic research. Their budget comes from the federal government. It hasn't changed in 10 years.
However, if it's more costly, that's meaning we need to cut somewhere, and definitely that's not the aspect we want to decrease. This is even an aspect we should increase. So we decide to keep all these aspects fully solid and really strong. However, instead of spending more hours on helicopter time, that's mean every researcher need to cut a little bit their time spending in the north.
Archambault says out of 72 project proposals they received this year, ArcticNet could only approve 22. He says they're looking for more funding. In the meantime, he says researchers will have to do their work faster and with fewer resources. Water levels across the Yukon are unusually low right now. People living in Marsh Lake, south of Whitehorse, aren't quite sure what to make of the situation. Some are making the best of it, others aware it could have consequences. The CBC's Virginia Ann has more.
Well, I feel like having a beach party. That's how I feel. But I also would be concerned if it stayed like this.
Peter Hibbink is making the most out of the unusual low water level. In front of his house in Marsh Lake, these extra meters of shores give the illusion of living at the beach. But Hibbink says he's also wary of living in a place that has seen extreme weather before.
Living here a long time, but you tend to really look at water levels and look at the apps regularly and see what it's doing. Compare it to other years, and I think people in particular that are more prone to getting flooded are really very observant of what's going on.
That's because several floods hit the Southern Lakes regions back in 2021. One hydrologist with the Yukon University says the territory will see more and more extreme weather patterns, and that could look like more drought or flooding.
We live in a semi-arid landscape, so we're never really far from a flood. We're one rainstorm away from a flood, and we're a few snowstorms that didn't happen or rainstorms that didn't happen away from, record dry conditions.
But for now, ask around and most residents will say the current situation...
It's better than flooding, I guess, so...
Better, perhaps, but it's hard to compare the two extremes. Stephen Collins says seeing his marina empty of boats is a reminder that the situation is far from normal.
At this point, normally we would have all the docks in the water and a few boats, and the water would be about a foot higher, I'd say, something like that.
Turcotte says because of a dry winter and a cooler spring, water levels are below average everywhere across the territory.
We're probably close to minimum records at a number of places and setting new dry records in some rivers at the moment. Well, there's many possible concerns, I would say. First of all, energy production, it's already a concern. Then you talk about salmon migration, you talk about fish habitat, you talk about drinking water. We can still go back to close to average by end of summer. Strangely, that would mean a quite rainy summer. And people would not be super happy about that.
Turcotte says that there's still enough snow up in the mountains to fill up lakes and reservoirs. But without decent rain, it would be surprising to reach water level averages. Virginia Ann, CBC News, Whitehorse.
This astonishing world, with its infinite possibilities, calls to the world shapers, impact makers, visioneers. Together, let's unlock potential everywhere.
New year, new school, new uniform. High school was a chance at reinvention, a whole new me. Who to join? Jocks? Nerds? This was life or death.
Take a risk. Life's short. Don't waste it living someone else's life. Just live your own.
Sometimes you find yourself in the right place at the right time. And if you're there with the right people, well, it doesn't get any better than that.
I brought a few friends along with me today.
3, 2, 1.
Mom, you're embarrassing me in front of the dragons.
Take me home, James.
Full of surprises here on The Den. Dragon's Den. Watch free on CBC Gem. 12 of Britain's best amateur bakers have made it to the tent.
This is an absolute dream.
Every inch of their baking skill will be scrutinised.
Lovely jubbly.
Those that falter will leave the tent.
One wrong move and it's over.
You want a game? Bring it on.
Go, go, go!
Oh my God! We need help out there.
Yeah, we'll come for you.
This is it! Canada's ultimate challenge.
The Nunavik Health Board is warning of very poor air quality across all 14 villages. Smoke from the prairie wildfires is moving through the region. The smoke is projected to last until Friday. The Health Board is advising residents to monitor for smoke-related illnesses.
If you are experiencing any symptoms of any sort that could be related to the bad air quality, such as wheezing, coughing, chest pain, difficulty breathing, please call your CLSC or show up at the nursing as soon as possible.
The Health Board also recommends people avoid doing activities outside and is suggesting people keep doors and windows closed as much as possible. Lack of rain is worsening conditions in northern Saskatchewan as crews struggle to contain more than 20 active wildfires. Hundreds of homes and structures have been destroyed so far. Further south, thousands of evacuees are wondering when they can return home and what they might find when they do. Alexander Silberman reports.
Hundreds of people are continuing to arrive at this evacuation center in search of a warm meal and a place to sleep. Volunteers are cooking up bowls of chili and hot dogs, and the gym is lined with cots as people try and get a bit of rest. Many of the people filling this building are evacuees from La Ronge, watching from afar as fire tears through their community. Wildfire has now destroyed more than a dozen homes, the local hardware store, a total loss. Next door, an iconic trading post home to hundreds of indigenous artifacts.
Not even doing a damn thing.
Also destroyed.
The fires create their own storms.
This tired firefighter arrived in the early morning in need of a break from the front lines. He says conditions became so dangerous from exploding propane tanks, his team had to move to safety and watch homes burn to the ground in nearby Sucker River.
You kind of feel helpless because you have your senior leaders that are telling you to back off and you want to go fight it, but you know, it's just a helpless situation.
We cry, hey? That's our home.
In a Prince Albert parking lot, this family from La Ronge is sleeping in a car.
I hope my town gets better.
Their lives now reduced to a suitcase and a few shopping bags.
We're all grieving as a community. We got to be here together. We have each other. Hey?
Yes.
We'll get through it.
Hundreds of kilometers northeast in Denair Beach, fire is continuing to destroy large parts of the community. Aggressive flames burning entire streets to the ground. Evacuees are now waiting it out, watching through photos and videos as the battle to protect their homes continues on the ground. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan.
Some Nunavut MLAs have concerns about the territory's long-term care projects. They're worried about delays and possible staffing gaps. A new facility in Rankin Inlet is done, but it sat empty for months. MLAs wonder what that means for two other long-term care projects promised in the territory's elder strategy. Carl Cardinal has more.
For years, many Nunavut elders have had to leave the territory for long-term care. New facilities in Rankin Inlet, Cambridge Bay and Iqaluit are set to bring them back. George Hikes is the MLA for Iqaluit-Tassiluk. He says the construction of the Rankin Inlet long-term care home was finished in January, but it sat empty for months until last week.
The government has been paying the contractor for over a year now, in excess of $1 million a month to operate the facility that has no residents in it, which to me just highlights the lack of planning.
John Main is the Minister of Health. He says time was needed to prepare the building and train staff.
It wasn't a simple case of, here's the keys, all right, let's start bringing people into the facility. We need to make sure everything is ready so that it's safe, so that it's comfortable for the residents.
The first 4 residents came from Ottawa last week, and 4 more are expecting to arrive this week. Main says the opening is being done in phases to prioritize safety and manage staffing. MLA Janet Brewster is worried the same delays that affected the Rankin Inlet facility will happen to the facilities in Cambridge Bay and Iqaluit.
Even with the delays that occurred in the building of the center, they still weren't able to be ready to open as soon as the building was done. So that makes me really concerned about future elders' homes.
The 3 facilities were announced in 2020, but those projects were put on hold during the COVID-19. The Cambridge Bay and Iqaluit Long-Term Care Center are currently in their design phases. Their completions are expected in 2030. Carl Cardinal, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Dawson City is popular among tourists, but it's not accessible for everyone. The historic town's infrastructure hasn't changed much over time. Its wooden boardwalks and ramps make it hard for those with mobility issues. Now, the town is trying to change that. Chris McIntyre reports.
Dawson City is a great place to live and to visit. The town's historic buildings and quirky design are the reason many say there's no place like it. But for people dealing with mobility issues, the quirkiness can be downright distressing, especially trying to access these businesses, or this hotel, or even this boardwalk to get to the businesses. This tourist from California says she's been taking in all of the sights Dawson has to offer, but carefully.
I am fully mobile, but I find myself really watching my steps and being extra super careful stepping on and off.
Why?
Last December I did trip and fall, and it was not pretty, and so now I'm very cautious. I think ramps going from the street up into the boardwalks would be good, or handrails, because a lot of the edges are like sawed off or cut off boards, and so like at one corner I'm holding onto a phone pole to get down just to make sure I don't trip and fall.
And I mean, is that part of the allure? When you go home, you'll be able to say, hey, I survived Dawson City, I didn't fall off their sidewalk?
I'm not going to say that, no.
Now, to be fair, the majority of tourists I spoke with today said the town's layout isn't going to stop them from enjoying their visit.
Again, it's an old town, and I like to see the old things. So in terms of accessible, like, I understand that, the boardwalks are here and it makes it easy for me to get whatever. Yes, you got to go up and down a little bit, but it's not an issue for me. I'm 67 years old and I'm doing fine.
It's just charming. It's what you come to look for, authenticity, of the place. So, yeah.
The conversation around accessibility isn't just a seasonal one. Many residents here in Dawson have been raising the issue for years.
Accessibility for us is a community concern, and it's a community opportunity.
Ricky Mawaganditse is the executive director for the Klondike Visitors Association. He says the town is making strides to create a more accessible Dawson in many small ways, including this brand new ramp installed at the Farmers Market gazebo on Front Street. But Mawaganditse says the town is taking accessibility one step further with the KVA's Accessible Dawson City initiative.
And using the Access Dawson City designation, which is the logo on the building there, really we're trying to create a wayfinding opportunity for community members and visitors to know that these facilities, these services are accessible, and the people that are operating these are always thinking about how can they make their product more accessible to the diverse range of accessibility needs that we have.
Mawaganditse says 9 businesses have signed up and more are anticipated as the summer season goes on. He says making the entire town accessible isn't going to happen overnight, but in the meantime, the community will come up with ways to tackle this issue one small step at a time.
How do we change our mindset around providing accessible services? How do we change the way that we operate as a business so we can meet customers where they're at if we cannot change our environmental design?
Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
A new chiropractic clinic has opened up in Hay River in the NWT. Edmonton's Niz Saab says the decision was more than just a business move. A trip north several years ago opened his eyes to the lack of access to medical care. He saw how life-changing it can be. He says after being in the field for 25 years, that trip rejuvenated him.
I got into the business to help people. And, when I started going up north, people were just like, thank you so much for coming here. I'm like, it's my pleasure. It's my privilege to do this. That kind of really altered me, which is why I decided to take a look, because I didn't know there was just limited access. I thought everybody had an opportunity, right?
Saab says his job is not just about adjustments, it's also about improving the overall health and wellness of his clients. Saab is offering appointments every weekend at his office in downtown Hay River. He's also planning to set up mobile services in other South Slave communities. A Tuktoyaktuk man's snowy owl carving has been gifted to King Charles. Inuvialuit carver Daryl Taylor made the sculpture. Inuit Taparit Kanatami gifted it to the king during his visit to Canada last week. Taylor didn't know this was going to happen until afterwards.
Next morning, I started getting phone calls from friends, and I was getting messages that were congratulating me. And so I checked it up, and they're on Facebook, and they did put it on Facebook, and wow, I was just amazed about that. Huh?
The snowy owl is about 7 inches tall. It took Taylor a little under a week to make. Now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Now take a look at these Oilers fans. Francis Beaverhoe from Wati in the NWT drives his black truck around, decked out with Edmonton Oilers flags flapping in the wind. Beaverhoe drives the truck between Wati, Yellowknife, and Detta, whipping up Oilers fever wherever he goes. The fever continues tonight, right after Northbeat with Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. That is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/north. Thanks for watching. I'm Leanie Lambrink. Have a good night.